Hello, and welcome to today's session on childcare licensing for school-age programs. I'm Trevor Davies. I'm Deputy Executive Director with the Michigan After School Partnership, and so glad that you've chosen to spend some time with us this morning. We're looking forward to learning together in community and continuing to support equitable access to quality out-of-school time experiences for young people here in Michigan. So thanks for being here. Wanted to give you a little bit of information about who we are at MASP, and then we'll jump into the content. But the Michigan After School Partnership is a statewide organization, and we advocate for equitable systems that support and expand quality out-of-school time experiences for all youth in the state. And we do this in a number of ways. But when we talk about out-of-school time, we're talking about before school, after school, and summer learning experiences. So those times that young people are not in the traditional K-12 school day. And so wanted to share just a little bit about what we do and how we advocate and support those programs and having quality or equitable access to quality programs. But we have lots of different things that we offer. We provide resources and support best practices through programmatic training and our newsletters, conferences, social media, and lots of other things. We also engage with stakeholders across the state, whether that be policymakers, families, elected officials, whomever, to support quality and equitable access to out-of-school time. We also share key data and information in order to foster and broaden that understanding of what youth needs are here in our state. And we're also champions for policies and funding that create strong and equitable systems all across Michigan. And you can learn more about MASP and the things that we do and the things we offer by visiting our website or any of our social media stuff. And I'll share all of those links and lovely things with you a little bit later today in our session. So with that said, there are a couple of ways that you can engage in today's session. One of which is we are recording today's session so that you can revisit these concepts and ideas and information at a later time, or to be able to share it with a colleague or a peer if they were unable to join us today. We also ask that you find that mute button and keep yourself muted on audio throughout the session when you're not speaking or asking questions. If you are comfortable, we invite you to be on with us on video. Love to be able to see your faces and at least pretend like we're together in the same space. It'd be great to see you if you're willing to do so. We also have a chat box. I'll be living in that space throughout. We have some guest facilitators, presenters today, but I will be kind of handling some of the back-end technology pieces, and I'll live there in that chat box. Happy to interact with you there. Feel free to raise your hand, make comments, share resources and ideas, ask questions early and often. We'll be there. And then lastly, we are able to provide my registry credit for today's session. And in order to get credit for that, you'll fill out a survey at the end of the session today, and we'll get you plugged in there. So who do we have with us today? We have a couple of wonderful champions in the out-of-school time space. First is Jessica Miranda Bevier. Jessica is a licensing consultant with MyLeap's Office of Early Childhood Education. She has worked in the education or the early childhood field for over 20 years and earned her master's degree in early childhood education from Grand Valley State University. She's worked in private child care centers, Great Start to Readiness program classrooms, private pay and public school early childhood programs, and is currently a child care licensing consultant in Kent and Ottawa counties. And we are also excited to have with us Deandra Ramsey, who is the out-of-school time grants manager with MyLeap's Office of Education Office of Education Partnerships. It is the Office of Preschool and Out-of-School Time Learning. And we're excited to have her with us today. Deandra has a lot of experience, a great deal of experience in the out-of-school time space, working with both licensed and non-licensed centers. She also has a master's degree in early childhood education and teaching from North Central University, and we are excited to have them both with us here today to talk about childcare licensing for school-age programs. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Deandra is going to jump in, and we are going to talk about licensing. So Deandra, right over to you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to actually be here with you guys. I feel like I have been with you all for like the last 3-4 weeks at this point, right? But on today, my portion is talking about the out of school time programs and what it looks like for licensing, right? We know that not everyone is licensed, but this is an opportunity to kind of get some thoughts about if you are considering to be licensed, what does that look like for you? What does that feel like, right? So I'm gonna have you guys interact with me. So as we go on. So again, like Trevor said, my name is Deandra Ramsey. I'm the out of school time grants manager. I've actually been in the out of school time fields now. I actually did the numbers, Trevor. I've been in the fields for 14 years. As of January. So it's shocking to realize I've been in education that long, but I am excited to be here and connect with you all and just kind of touch base and answer any questions that you may have, especially what does licensing look like for out of school time field. Okay, technology going. Okay, there we go. All right. So when you think of or hear childcare licensing, what comes to mind? And feel free to kind of chime in. You can put it in the chat, or you can come off mute real quick and just tell us what do you hear of or what do you think of when you hear childcare licensing?
I think of the licensing, making sure your binder and paperwork is complete.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think of paperwork and some red tape, maybe jumping through some hoops.
Absolutely. And it's okay if you think of negative stuff. I don't want you to feel like you only have to say the good stuff, right? I've been there. All right. So some of the things I've heard is money, right? Like childcare licensing can be a cost. And so I remember somebody saying that program must have money to be able to do childcare licensing, right? Because it is a cost to an organization. Something else that I've seen, right? More paperwork. We've talked about that, or somebody just mentioned that it is more paperwork. Not just the paperwork we currently do in out of school time with connecting and engaging with young people, enrollment forms and things, but also the red tape or the paperwork that goes into it. But for me, that's a good thing, right? So it helps you to really think about and be intentional about what your planning is. So, what are some hesitations to become a licensed program? If anybody wants to come off of mute, we talked about the paperwork, we talked about the money. What are some hesitations?
Finding staff.
Okay. Finding staff.
Some other things in the chat box were time,
Yes.
safety of kids.
Okay. Anything else in the chat box? I can't really see the chat box.
There were a couple of comments earlier about what do you think about when you hear,
Mhm.
childcare licensing. It was to meet the needs to operate, that it's a resource, that you're actually licensed to take care of children, advancement in the childcare field, all standards required for childcare.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Trevor. So some of the things that we want to kind of connect with is quality and out of school time, right? So when we think of quality, we think of intentionality. And so for us, as we are building our out of school time programs, or when you are developing your programs, or when you are actually doing program, you want to make sure that you are intentional about supporting our young people, right? We're intentional about how we're connecting with staff. We're intentional about how we are developing our program, talking to parents, talking to teachers or school districts or whomever, right? But quality in OST means intentionality, making sure that you're connecting the dots to do and support all that you want to support with young people. And so thinking about OST, right? Like as providers, what do we provide? We provide opportunity for mentoring. We provide leadership. We provide community engagement, agriculture, right? Like having them actually play in dirt sometimes. Thinking about their food, we provide art programs. We provide music, literacy, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, health, recreation, right? Like we provide all these things. And we put our time and effort in those. But in being intentional, we also have to connect. How do they connect the dots for our young people? And so if you are being intentional about providing all of these components, guess what you're also being intentional about? You're also supporting what licensing is asking you to be supportive for young people anyway. And so looking at program designs, right? Like some of our program designs, we try to make sure that we provide small and large muscles, right? But these are actually words from licensing. But when you think about those, what are the supplies or what type of activities are we providing for kids in these different areas? And you could come off mute as well. I'm not sure if you put it in the chat box, but one example is basketball. Who plays basketball in their program? Right? Like, are you playing basketball? Are you playing dodgeball? That was my go-to. Are they going outside? Are they on the play equipment? Are you doing plays? Are you creating plays for your kids? Are you doing different role activities, creativity, art programs or art projects? If you're doing art projects, you're creating the creativity. You're also helping out with the imaginative play. Think about language. A lot of us are working on literacy supports, right? So we're doing the vocabulary words. We are doing the reading out loud, reading with the buddy. March is reading month. So we're doing activities around reading. We're also helping with early math and science experiences, right? Like we're doing science experiments. Well, guess what? These are all components, and Jessica can probably talk a little bit more, but these are some of the components that are listed in licensing that you must make sure you're supporting young people with, right? So if you're already creating opportunities for young people to have these experiences in your program based on the activities, the ideas, the enrichment things you're doing, then you're already helping to support those pieces in OST. Now, I'm not sure if any of you guys had this, but this is an old enrollment form that I had with my program when I used to work in direct service. And so as you look at this enrollment form, right, like you see the student's name, the birth date, the gender, you see their address, their demographics, parent contact information, how are they getting to and from program? With licensing, sometimes they want to know the other communications with families. Also see the information on the back. Not everybody has to collect all this information, but quite a few organizations collect this information, especially if you're connected or associated with a school district, that you may be collecting some of this information, but some of this information is key. How many of you guys have had students in your program, and you could come off mute, students in your program, or raise your hand, that you could not get in contact with a family member because you didn't have a number to contact somebody, right? Like,
don't put that all the way out of there.
Right? Like if you can't get in touch with a parent, you have another parent's number to call, or you have another guardian you can communicate with, right? If you have mom's number, but you need dad's, this is an opportunity that you can do so. As well as on the back, we also had other emergency contacts, right? Like if mom and dad are both at school, then, or both at work and at school, then who else can I communicate with? And so this gave me an opportunity with being intentional of making sure that
Move
I
right over
had
there.
the ability to
See.
connect with kids or connect with family members that can pick up kids in the event that parents were not available in those emergency situations. And so again, being intentional about making sure that you have access and connections with our kids in the event that emergencies happen, because we know that kids can do everything, right? But also in connections. So if you are following most standards, we had our most standards training, last week, right, Trevor? And so for those who participated in the most standards training, if you are adhering or following most standards, you are either close to or already adhering to school age childcare licensing standards. I served on the most standards committee. And so when we began to update and rewrite those documents, one of the things we did was we walked through what licensing said versus what we thought were, or what are considered to be the best practices in out of school time here in Michigan. And so because of that, we wanted to make sure that we were not just adhering to the basics, but we were superseding and ensuring that we were giving the best of the best practices for our young people. And so here's one example. And in physical safety here, this is taken directly out of the Most Standards book. If you don't have it, out at the end, I'll put all of the links in the chat box so that you can go to it, or you can visit the OST website or the 21st Century website. They're both listed on there. Now, looking at the health and physical safety. So you see here, we said children and youth are supervised at all times, including during arrival, transition, and departure. Right? You have, with most standards, there also the environment is clean and appropriately sanitized. Disinfecting and maintenance procedures are in process or being followed, right? Like these are the most standards. But guess what? These are also some of the same standards that you're required to do just in working with kids and licensing. And so we want to make sure that we know that if you're, like I've said before, if you're already adhering to most standards, you are already connecting some of the dots to licensing as well. And so for most standards versus licensing, so I only pulled out two pieces. So one of the pieces for most standards is the ratios, looking at licensing ratios versus most standards. And so for licensing ratios for K through 12, it's 1 to 18, one adult for every 18. However, with most standards, if you're in out of school time and you're adhering to most standards, then K through 3 or kindergarten through 3rd grade, best practices, if you have enough staff, right? Best practices is 1 to 10, because you have your smaller kids. So it's 1 to 10. However, with 4th through 12th grade, it's 1 to 15. So looking at the difference between licensing standards and most standards, you're already adhering to or superseding what licensing would be requiring you for ratios with adults and kids. And the same way with training. As you know, even probably from January up until March, you probably already superseded that 16 hours of training. However, for licensing, annual training, unless they've updated it, is a minimum of 16 hours, right? So you only really need 16 hours to meet the quota for training for licensing. But most standards says at least 24 hours of training annually. So as you see, most standards has already increased the amount of training, which, as we know in OST, we do a lot of training, right? Like if you participated this past, 2 weeks, when we did the MAC conference, you probably have about 15 hours from the MAC conference alone, just by participating in that 2-day training. And I see a hand from Amanda. I am going to wait till the end to ask any additional questions, just so I can finish through this, okay? So either put it in the chat for me or hold on to it so that we can get it. And I don't want to lose your spot. And so again, if for those who are also in OST, how many of us, by a show of hands, how many of us are also using the PQA tool, right? From the forum or Weichert Center, for those who old school like me, I still call them Weichert. But for everybody else who knows them by the forum as well, you are either close to or already adhering to child care licensing standards as well. And so again, with the PQA tool, it talks a lot about your intentionality of setting up your space and your connection and your engagement with young people, ensuring that they are safe and supported to learn and lead. So here is the PQA tool. Man, I missed this tool, Trevor. Right, so with the PQA tool, right, like as you see, it is designed to ensure that you are moving students up from the bottom to the top, right? So on the very basics, you want to make sure you have a safe environment. That includes emotional safety, healthy environment, emergency and preparedness, accommodating environment, making sure that the tables can be accommodated or that you can move the space around and be modified, as well as nourishment. Do kids have drinking water? Are drinking fountains available? Are bathrooms available, right? Like those basic things. Same way with supportive environment. You're actually speaking to kids when they walk in. You are ensuring that the session flow properly. You have it posted somewhere. You have enough time for kids to engage in the activities. You're building on their skills. The kids are engaging in the stuff. You're encouraging them and you are helping them when they are having a challenge, right? Like looking at all of these, at least the very two bottom sections, just looking at those alone, you're able to make sure that you're pretty much adhering to licensing. And so, again, we're already doing a lot of the stuff. In doing a lot of those, I think one of the bigger things is breaking down the barrier of what licensing will be requiring us in comparison to what we're already doing and keeping young people safe. And so again, here's the breakdown of just safe environment, right? So when you look at just the components of safe environment, you're talking about emotional safety, positive emotional climate, lack bias. When you're thinking about healthy environment, the components for in the PQA tool is free of hazards and health hazards, right? Clean and sanitary, adequate ventilation and lighting, comfortable temperature, right? Like how many times are you hearing kids hollering about it's cold or it's too hot? Any of those things, those are pieces that we look at with the PQA tool. If we're looking at those with the PQA tool, you're also adhering and ensuring that if this was a licensing inspection, you're adhering to the standards as well. Now, thinking about OST trainings, these are also trainings that can be components for licensing, right? So family and community collaboration, right? Like a lot of us are doing parent engagement activities that are bridging the community and the family, bringing them together, talking about mental health supports, talking about student supports, how to help them with their academics. Program safety, right? Like we're also doing playground safety, program management. Our program managers are going through their own trainings, teaching and learning, interaction and guidelines, professionalism, lesson planning. All of the lesson planning we do, a lot of those are components that can also be cleared through licensing. And then here are another list of trainings that I personally used to do with my staff when we were going through staff trainings. And this was throughout the year and sometimes multiple times during the year. Social emotional learning, making sure that our staff knew about cultural competency, anti-bias practices, administration of medicine. Oh, that is key either in summer program or sometime in the after school program. Me as a former site coordinator, I used to have to administer medicine for young people. But what did that look like? That meant that there was I had to document everything that I was doing with them, as well as making sure that I was adhering to what was required if I was administering medicine to those students, even something simple as their inhaler. And so again, looking at some of the PQA items that are with youth work methods. So youth voice, homework help that we all do. When we do those trainings, those are trainings that can also go towards your licensing trainings as well. And any other topics dealing about childcare and environment. And so again, putting these all together, right? So you have most standards, you have youth work methods, you have licensing. If you are doing any of the three, you are adhering or you're working towards to adhere to all three. And again, with OST, we do a lot. We do a lot in terms of keeping kids connected and engaged and making sure that we are supporting them in different areas. But those different areas can help us when we're considering being licensed. So thinking about intentional, right? So when we think about intentionality, another component is workforce development. And this will be something that Sonia, if she's not on, she'll be able to speak to a little bit more. But when we talk about workforce development, when we're talking about credentialing our staff, building our staff up to either become from coordinators to directors, right? Like when you want to improve their skills, building their skills also help to build their capacity and their experiences in OST, but also can build them in a career in OST. Like I said before, I've been in this field for 14 years. I started out as a youth development worker, meaning I was in the classroom with the kids. I was the one that was supervising them during their after school time. And so through starting out that way and taking advantage of some of the trainings and coachings and supports, I've been able to make a career out of this. Well, guess what? Some of you guys have made a career, as well as some of your staff coming up after you have the ability to make a career. So you are developing your staff through credentials, you're giving them certificates, they are having an opportunity to have skills that can't be taken away from them just by doing some of the trainings and coachings that we do in out of school time. And so again, with OST funding, another component of licensing in OST is opportunities for funding. Not saying that all, but there are some grant opportunities or some funding opportunities that are associated sometimes with licensing. And specifically with my department, the out of school time grants, one of the components in our application this past 23-24 was whether an applicant is serving children in any of the grades K-8, is licensed or in the process of becoming licensed, or has implemented the Michigan State Board of Education MOST standards, which is Michigan Out of School Time of Quality Standards. Now, again, you don't have to be licensed to get the grant, but as a part of priority points, you do get points for being licensed. It's not a lot, but you do get some points. That improves your application score and increases your application score. And I know some other grants, like there are some state level grants that are offered where you have licensing as a component to actually get the funding, such as 21st Century and a couple of others. So how does licensing fit into OST? So again, one of the components is the quality and ensuring that we are offering, not saying that you have to be licensed to offer quality, But if you're already offering quality, you can add licensing to, okay, you can add licensing to your opportunity for young people. And then how do you set up your space for young people? If you are licensing helps you to think about how you set up your space, making sure that it's physically safe, that you are offering staff development, you're offering student development and administrative responsibilities. So those are some of the components of how licensing really fits in. But if some of us can acknowledge, like, most of these things we're already doing. If you're already doing a lot of these components, then adding the paperwork for licensing is only an added bonus for you, not necessarily a takeaway from who you are. And I actually forgot to link the form here, but once I finish, I will put these in the chat box. But you can also go to our website at michigan.gov/MyLeap/OST or out of school time grants or educational partnerships. And I'll put these in the link, but most standards is on our website, as well as the updated licensing rules and amendments are on our website. That way you can walk through and see if you qualify. And some of the other components may be the structure or the physical space, but that's something that Jessica will talk about. But here are some resources, and I can also put them in the chat box. And here is my contact information. I'm not sure, Trevor or Jessica, do we want to hold for questions at the end? Or does anybody have any questions
As I
now?
say, if they have questions specific about what you presented,
Yeah.
then yeah.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions? I know I saw a couple of hands, but I wanted to make sure we got through that piece.
Yeah, I had a quick question about the required training hours. I'm curious, are those coming from like external sources or like specific accredited organizations, or are those internal trainings? Like, can we do internal organizational trainings that count towards staff annual
All of the
hours?
above.
Okay, cool.
All of the above. One of the major components, and I'll try to go back to that. One of the major components is making sure you're writing it down, right? Like your intentionality of keeping track of your trainings. For some, we'll talk about that later, but some are already in my registry. So long as you're tracking it on your training logs. And licensing usually have a specific log that you can use, or if you as your organization have one, you just want to make sure it's detailed in what you're training on, what areas you're focused on, who's doing the training, how long was the training, and any other information that if you received a certificate or anything. But yes, they can be internally, they can be through outside sources, or a combination of both.
Awesome, cool, thank you. And one, follow-up to that question is, do the people giving the training need to have specific certifications or like accreditations, like the staff that's giving the internal training, or no? Is that like not required for it to be able to count?
It depends on the training.
Okay.
Right? So I'm quite sure you will want them to be certified if they're giving first aid training.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but if you're talking about like cultural competency, right? Like that could be a certificate that they may have, that they've specialized in, or it could be a combination of things. But most of the trainings are usually, like, most of the time, if you're paying somebody to do a training, they are certified in something, or
Okay.
accredited in it. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of opportunities online too. There are a lot of free opportunities for doing trainings as well. And once I finish, I can put a couple in the chat as well. Any other questions for me? And I actually finished earlier than I thought.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to follow up in regards to, I'm sorry, I forgot the other woman's name. But the
Jessica.
thing that's just, Jessica, to stay in compliance with Laura, don't all those who are in the classroom need to have those 16 hours within my registry? Like, it doesn't matter, like I'm just like, so yes, I have a speech therapist and she gets her, continuing ed for her speech pathologist, but I also need to make sure it transfers into my registry, correct?
For licensing, no, we will accept just certificates. The trainings do not have to be taken through my registry.
Okay,
I believe for Great Start to Quality, if you're participating with them,
Mhm.
yes, they require that. And
okay.
it does get confusing when you're dealing with all these different entities and keeping straight who's who and what's what. And we get those questions a lot. Well, licensing requires, and like, no, it doesn't. So yeah, really just asking those questions and just making sure you're clear.
So I
about
just
that.
need to make sure, because these are two individuals who only really go into the classroom during the summertime. So I just need to ensure that these individuals, like I have their PD and their certificates on file in case licensing were to show up.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, fantastic. I just want to make sure that we're staying in compliance, and that's something that's so simple, right? Like these people are getting their PD, it's
Yes,
sitting
they
there.
are.
I just need to have that license on hand.
Sure.
So,
And we only require that for actual staff. So
Yeah.
if it's an unsupervised volunteer, which you mentioned a speech pathologist, so I don't.
the thing is, they like oversee, and they're gonna be in the classrooms as well. And I think it's one of those pieces where, I mean,
Okay.
we have them, we have them, they have their fingerprints done, they have their TB test done.
So you count them as
They've done
staff.
the health,
Yeah.
right, in the health and safety. So that's part of where I'm like, I think we would, they'd be considered staff. So I need to
Yeah.
have the,
Sure.
Yep.
and
The
when
other-
is it? Cause I deal with this only in the summer, like, what is it, calendar year I'm looking for the 16 hours, or am I looking at from licensing date?
Licensing looks at calendar year.
Okay.
So yeah, yes, unfortunately, there are no separate rules for if an individual only works part-time, full-time, if they're a lead, if they're an assistant, staff or staff. So whether they're there one day or 160 days or whatever it is, the requirement is the same in terms of training. And we do look at calendar year, January through December. I was going to add one thing that sometimes programs don't realize: if individuals are attending college and working on an education degree, early childhood degree, social work, psychology, a lot of times those classes will count as training hours towards for licensing, and 1 3-semester class will count for up to 15 hours of training. So if you have individuals that are working in your programs and going to school, all you need at the end of their semester is a printout of the courses that they took. You do need to see the grades because it only counts if they pass the class. And if it has anything to do with child development education, like I mentioned, social work, child development, our rules kind of lay it all out, what can count. You can count those hours. So they would already have 15 hours from one class.
Thank you. This is very helpful.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. And I would also add, previously as a director and as a program coordinator, for those that I had that worked during the school day, or like I had teachers that worked with me, I had social workers, right? I would just ask them, hey, can you give me a list? Or can you, sometimes they're CEUs, right? Like print out your CEUs and I can staple them together with your training logs. And those type of things I would do, because they, like, as you know, if they're working in the school day, they are PD. They probably overextended in terms of the 24 hours, right? Like they're required to because of their contract. So if they already have PD and professional development that they're getting through the school, in some cases, if it was dealing with childcare support, then we would tap them into us also. And so those were some of the ways that I did it, just to keep track. and just have it when they started working. Okay, if there are no more questions for me,
Deandra, I'm going to jump in real quick. There were a couple of questions that came up in the chat box that I can address.
Okay.
One of them is around my registry and credit for today's session. I've included some information in the chat window as well, but at the end of today's session, I will pull up a QR code on the screen as well as drop a link in the chat box to fill out the session evaluation for the day. We will then take that and use that to upload participation into my registry for you so that that'll appear sometime in the next 2 weeks. We say 2 weeks, it's almost always way before that, but to give us a little bit of grace to get that uploaded is always appreciated. And so with that, just additional information around my registry. It's another one of those things that is out there. It's another one of the systems Jessica mentioned, like they all kind of overlap and interact sometimes with each other. But just to kind of call that out a little bit for folks, my registry is, it's just miregistry.org. It's essentially an online learning management system that allows you to track your professional development. If you are interested in pursuing the Michigan Youth Development Associate credential or certificate, you'll have to utilize that system because that's how it interacts and interplays. As Jessica mentioned, if you're part of the Great Start to Quality initiative, they utilize that there. If you're a licensed program, you can create an organizational profile, which will allow you to invite staff to that so that if you want to pull up your professional development qualifications and hours and things, it's all there for you. But it does require that each individual person creates a profile and all the information lives within that profile. If you're a licensed center, you're able to create an organizational profile and then invite those staff to your organization. It's not the other way around. You can't create user profiles in your organization. You have to invite those individuals to your organization. Hopefully that makes sense. We're also in the process right now of working with my registry to create a category of non-licensed programs. So that if you're not a licensed program, if after today you're not ready to pursue licensing or it doesn't fit for your organization, you would still be able to access my registry. So to be continued, coming soon in that space. It is a wonderful way to be able to track and keep records of professional development. So it really encourage you to do encourage your staff to do so because that profile travels with them. So if you're a staff member and you work in a childcare center here, but you also work in a Y camp over here, and maybe you work in an out of school time program here or before school here, all of that training travels with the individual. It doesn't reside with the organization. So just another incentive to consider looking into my registry. I'll be happy to answer questions about that. There's also some information in here about the grants that were mentioned. Deandra was referencing the Michigan Out of School Time Grant, or also known shorthand as 32N. That is an annual competition at this point that is closed. It's up and running now. We'll open up sometime summer into fall. We're still working through the deadlines and in partnership with MyLeap on that. But keep an eye out for that. A great way to be able to stay up to date with those things is to sign up for our newsletter. MASP will push out that information as it becomes available, so you don't have to remember to check in. We'll just make sure that that information gets sent out. Just sign up. So those were the things that I saw pop up in there, and we'll share it back with you, Jessica.
All right, let me share my screen here. And I apologize, I have a cold that I've been struggling with for, I think now it's week 4. So I do apologize. I will try to mute myself when I'm coughing. Am I just sharing the PowerPoint or not yet? There we go. All right, so I'm going to talk more about the actual licensing. As Trevor mentioned, I am a childcare licensing consultant. I do work out of the Grand Rapids office. And just our time today will just kind of be a brief kind of overview on licensing, the process, some rules if you have specific questions about things. There's a lot of information, and with the time we have, it's not possible for me to give you all the information. I will encourage you all to reach out to your local entities because the information I give you is just is kind of general. If you have very specific questions about your program, something very specific about specific staff and what's required, I may just say, you know, you do need to reach out to that regional, excuse me, office and ask those specific questions, because the manager in that region and the consultant in that region really needs to address those types of questions. If you're currently licensed and you have a consultant, reach out to your consultant, because again, too, they'll know all the specifics and ins and outs. I can give you, you know, general information. And my other disclaimer is this is licensing information as it is today. A couple weeks from now, it may change. Unfortunately, things do change, and we do add information, we do change information. Our rules currently are in the process of being reviewed. So that will mean that there will be a new rule set coming out. Excuse me, I do not have a date for that. I'm not sitting on any of those committees at this time. So I don't know when an actual release date will be, but just know that that's on the horizon. Also, you know, legislation changes and things get added, causes us to change our rules and kind of what we require. So again, reaching out to consultants. We'll take a tour of the licensing website as well. That's a good place to make sure to check on information, see what changes are coming. If you are currently licensed or are thinking about being licensed and want to make sure you're getting updates on licensing information, there is a way to sign up for emails where you can be added to the listserv. And our Bureau does send information out pretty much on a weekly basis concerning updates or just information. Those of you who have been working with licensing for a while knew we were under LARA, Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. We have made the move to MyLeap that happened in December. So we are under MyLeap now, no longer LARA. So if you see things coming from MyLeap, it's going to be probably different entities that you're communicating with too, but there's many bureaus, departments now underneath this new department. So one question that I get asked a lot, and we get asked a lot, is, you know, do you have to be licensed? And in terms of licensing, when we're looking at programming and the organization that's running it, if you're established as an organization and you are receiving children under the age of 12, and childcare is your principal function of the organization, and you're providing care to children, it is required by law that you are licensed. Again, there are different variations to this. Our policy does have some exemptions for that. Things like Vacation Bible School, Mom's Day Out, some recreation or social, excuse me, clubs or groups do not need to be licensed. Again, just if you're not sure, reach out to that regional manager and just say, this is what we're doing. Does it need to be licensed? If you're wondering, just speaking with them, explaining exactly what you're doing. I have a program right now that's running. They are licensed during the school year, but they are going to be operating in the summer, offering some different type of programming, week-to-week programming, and we're asking that they document exactly what kind of programming are they running, what's enrollment going to be, et cetera, et cetera. We just need details, and then we'll need to make a decision on whether they need to be licensed or not. So just making sure that you're just kind of double checking. I know that for homes, we do have some specific requirements, and some of you may be working out of homes. If you're providing care for unrelated children for more than 4 weeks out of the year and making more than $600 a year, you are required to be licensed as well. We do get complaints into our office about unlicensed care. Individuals from the public will call in and let us know, and usually we respond by a letter. Excuse me. If it's a home, if it's a center or a school-based program, we do make an on-site visit and ask what kind of programming they're offering, what kind of services they're providing, and then kind of make a determination if they need to be licensed or not. I mentioned the exemptions, listing them here. Oh, the one thing I missed was that there's therapeutic services or if there's parents on site. A lot of businesses are starting to provide childcare services on site. So if parents are always present on the premises, those programs do not have to be licensed if they're providing care in those types of organizations and settings. Any questions about any of that? And again, just that reminder to reach out to that local office. When we tour the website, I'll make sure to point out some of those things. If we do happen to come out or you get a letter that you're operating without a license, we are required to open up a special investigation. We do come and ask questions. It might seem a little invasive. I've had to ask individuals for phone numbers of parents that they're providing just, to ask questions. Are they actually, if a person's providing care for related children, it falls under a different exemption. So they don't always have to be licensed, but they can choose to be. So we do have to ask some questions. Then that goes up to our division director who signs off on that. If the organization does not stop operating, our division director will get involved with that. It can also impact funding sources. So if a program is not operating with a license, it can impact that as well. If you're getting funding from governmental entities, that can impact that as well. If programming continues, we can reach out to the Attorney General and request injunctive relief, and they will actually require the programs to shut down. We don't like to get to that point. A lot of times when we come out to open up that special investigation, it's to ask those questions, but then to also give information about being licensed and how organizations, individuals can apply for a license and become licensed and come make sure that they are. A lot of it's just to inform the individuals that you probably didn't realize, but you do need to be licensed. Here's how you can go about that, and offering that information. Too, complaints come in and out. We know with social media, reputations can be impacted by bad press. So, a lot of you are running programs, and if you're, like Deandra mentioned, if you are operating under these standards that you use, when she was showing those and just mentioning a few of those, a lot of that you are exceeding what licensing is requiring. Licensing, we are the minimum standard, and we're looking mostly at health and safety issues and items. We do have some programming items, but they're the basic. They're not necessarily best practice. Licensing will offer recommendations on best practice, but we don't require that. And so the fact that you already have these standards, you're already doing a lot of these things, you are already above and beyond what she mentioned about what licensing is doing. But those complaints can come in, and if you're not licensed, sometimes that can put a bad spin, a bad image in the public's eye that, well, this program, they're not licensed after all, and maybe parents thought that they were. That can impact your organization and the reputation of the school district, the corporation, whatever it is that you're operating under. And I know some individuals mentioned those hesitations of being licensed is cost. Yes, there is some cost, but if you're already up and running an organization, you're already offering that programming with materials and equipment, you have staff, the cost of actually applying for license is not a huge cost. Yes, there are inspections that need to be completed. Those can be a little bit larger costs, but there are some grants that can help with licensing, starting that up. I honestly don't know if those are all still available, but there is information on our website about grants, startup grants, and that will help cover costs to become licensed, because that's a barrier that the state recognizes exists and is putting programs in place to help with that, to encourage programs to be licensed. Something else someone mentioned about is not agreeing with the rules. Yes, there are rules. That's all licensing is, it's rules. And unfortunately, some rules probably don't seem to make a lot of sense. I know people have said, well, that's just common sense, but we've had to actually add rules because we thought things were common sense, but individuals were doing things that were not considered a healthy or safe option when caring for children. And we've had to add rules because individuals are doing things that don't align with keeping children healthy and safe. So that is also something, but there is a way to suggest rule changes. There is a way to question rules. And I'll show you that too when we go into our website. Someone else mentioned red tape, the hoops. Unfortunately, yes, we are a government entity. It's just the nature of what it is. But having a consultant, our central office does try to help you navigate that. Consultants will try to help you navigate that too. So hopefully you can get the support you need with navigating those hoops. So specifically about licensing, things that you need to know, we do have our Child Care Organization Licensing Act. It's our Public Act 116. It was amended in 22. I mentioned earlier that it is being revised. We are required to review our rules every 5 years. So it is something that can pretty frequently change. So that is available. It's all public on our website, so you can see what the rules are and review those and read those. There are other laws and acts that you also need to be aware of if you are being licensed, and those are listed below. They, child protection law, being mandated reporters, the fact that you work with children every day, you are required and you are a mandated reporter. There are specifications for that as well, being familiar with that, making sure that the equipment that children use are safe, making sure the playgrounds they use are safe. If you're transporting children, understanding what those vehicle codes are, and then just being aware of all these. Some others that are not listed on here, like the ADA compliance, that's something that needs to be considered as well. So there are different laws and acts that do impact our rules. Like some rules are there because of these other acts that are in place, so we can't change them. Some other rules we can change, so it just depends. Any questions about any of this? All right, so this is what you're all waiting for, the nitty-gritty of this. How do you become licensed? I may have to jump out of when I tried this link earlier, it wasn't working for me. But I'm going to try it. We do have on our, we do have on our website a resource guide. And I feel like someone asked in the chat is, what is the licensing website? If you type in michigan.gov/CCLB for Child Care Licensing Bureau, that will take us to our website. And this is where all of our information lives, and it's all public. I'll just show you a couple things here right now.
Hey,
I mentioned,
Jessica,
yes.
you're not showing it. You're still showing your
Oh.
slide.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. And I also me and Trevor both put licensing website in the chat.
Okay. Let me share this other one. Oh, no, that's not what to do. What to do this. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Yes, please let me know if you can't see anything. I mentioned contacting a regional manager. So under the contact us, there is a directory of the different regions. It actually has the managers' names on there. And then the consultants that work under that manager, and phone numbers and email addresses. So this is all public information. So you can reach out. It does also has information for our central office, which is this up here. Our Strong Start. This is the unit that deals with grants or getting getting help on how to start that licensing process. So these are good individuals to reach out to. But all the different areas are listed. If you're not sure what area you're in, there is this coverage map here that will show you how the areas are broken up and who is responsible for that. So I wanted to show you our resource guide, which is down here. And this, if you're a licensed provider or wanting to be licensed, this child care licensing resources, this is where everything you need to know is in this section here. So this resource to a licensure, it has information on how to get licensed. I'm just going to show and share the child care center license information. There is information about homes. The home process is pretty similar in terms of paperwork. The inspections are not required for homes such as fire or playground or lead inspections. But for centers, it is a little more complicated of a center. So it takes you through each step of what to do. You know, what we recommend you do. Here are our fees for licensure. It does depend on the capacity of children. So how many children total you are wanting at one time in your program. These are written in our law, so they cannot change. So these fees will not change because they are written in our law this way. That was something our last division director wanted to make sure to do to keep that cost down, so that wasn't an obstacle for providers. There are some terms that you will need to become familiar with. So this resource guide does do a nice job of explaining those. So a licensee designee, because you will need to know who these individuals are and what their responsibilities are. Our rules do lay out specifically what a licensee is responsible for, what a licensee designee is responsible for doing, what a program director is responsible for doing. So just making sure you see all of that. So this just goes, like I said, through all the steps of what to do, different inspections that will be required. And these are all items that need to be considered as you're submitting that application. We highly recommend that if you're looking at a specific building, a specific site, that you have a fire inspector come out, and it does have to be a qualified fire inspector that's been approved through licensing. So we do actually list those individuals, who they are and their contact information and coverage areas. So you do need to contact one of those individuals. Many times programs will reach out to the local fire marshal, fire department. Those are not the individuals for that. Unless you're in a school building, which is a little bit different, then we do require that you are following school fire safety rules. But if you're in any other type of building, we consider you a center. And then in the school, we consider you a center too, but it's a different process in terms of fire. So just having that fire inspector come out and kind of do a walkthrough of that building and let you know if they feel that building would be approved, because the fire safety corrections are usually what costs more. You're replacing doors, you're replacing furnaces, so things that can be costly, or you're having to move walls or doors, whatever it is. So we always encourage individuals who are just starting out this process, reach out to a fire inspector to just walk through your building and give you some recommendations, just so that you know what you're kind of going to be expecting if you get that inspection completed. Environmental health will need to come out as well and look at those buildings. The local health department is responsible for completing those environmental health inspections. Each county health department does have a different process, a different fee scale. So reaching out to them, asking what specifically they need from you, what you're planning on doing, reaching out to them because it does differ. Consultants can be helpful in the fact that we kind of know what the county we work in, what they will do and say, but really reaching out to that health department to get that information. If the building that you're looking at was constructed before 1978, you will also need to have a lead risk assessment completed. This can be costly. Again, we do have a list of certified lead risk assessors on our website, and all these blue underlined words take you to a link. So it'll take you right to the spot, or it's supposed to take you right to the spot where those individuals are listed, or where that information is found, or where that form is. One thing that we recommend for lead is that when they come out to complete the risk assessment, that they are looking at the whole building or any spaces that you think children may be in the future. If you're currently just using one wing of a building or certain rooms, but there's other rooms and there might be a potential for you to have them do the whole building, because it will be more expensive to have them come out repeatedly every time you need to add space. And those spaces have not already been assessed. You'll have to wait for the assessment to be done and for them to get you a report. So if you feel that they could use more of this space, have them just assess the whole building. That way you know right away. Furnace and hot water inspections will also become needed, or boiler inspections if the building has a boiler. This is something that the fire inspector will ask to see, but it's something that your consultant will also need records of documentation of. Playground inspections, if there's any playground equipment installed, it does have to be commercial grade. We do not allow residential grade equipment on playgrounds for centers. The only exceptions to those are if it's the little tykes houses that they just walk into, or the little tykes picnic tables that they just sit at. Those can be residential, but any climbing equipment, sliding, swinging, it does all have to be commercial grade. It does all have to be inspected and pass inspection. If you're in a school building, there are some exemptions for that. If it's school-age children that are participating in your program, usually for the most part, those playgrounds are approved through the state or Department of Education. Since those children use those playgrounds during the day, then it's fine for school-age children to use those playgrounds during those before and after school programs or summer programs. The only thing you need to keep in mind is if you have children participating in your program that are younger than school age, the playground then does need to be inspected, because we need to ensure that children younger than school age can use that equipment. We do also require some fingerprinting. So the applicant, the licensee, staff, assistants, any unsupervised volunteers, there is a whole process for fingerprinting. There is a website that we use for that, where the information, you input that information in and schedule the fingerprinting, and that all gets processed through a separate unit under our bureau. That is a very important thing. Probably talk about that a little bit later. We do have requirements for program directors as well. So if you're running a school age program, There are specific school age program director requirements, so we do ask that the individual overseeing your program does have some qualifications, and there is a rubric that you follow to ensure that that person is qualified, and that's something that you will give that information to the consultant that you'll be working with, and they will make sure that that individual qualifies. We do have currently, someone mentioned finding staff and staffing issues. We do currently have variances that can be asked for program directors. So if someone doesn't quite qualify, maybe they have a lot of experience but don't quite have the education, you are able to submit a variance request for that individual under the understanding that they will complete a degree or work towards a degree and we will give them 4 years to work on that schooling so that they can get that schooling, those qualifications in place. So we do offer that as well, because we know that there is a staffing issue. Policies and procedures, a lot of this, when Deandra was talking about just plans about emergency procedures and professional development and just things that you do in your program, I'm sure you probably have to have those things documented and written out. So those are things that we would expect also. So a lot of these things that you're already doing are things that we require anyway. And so you'd already have them done. It's just a matter of them getting reviewed by your consultant. We do have requirements for staff. Someone asked a question about training. That's a big one. Training, making sure they have CPR first aid, orientation. There are some health and safety trainings that need to be completed. So for this whole process is for an original license. You would go through all these steps. All these things would need to be approved by your consultant. They need to make sure that they have all the documentation in place for that. Then we would come out and do that actual on-site inspection, inspect the actual space, measure rooms to see how many children you can fit in those spaces, and get your license opened up so you can start operating under that license. And then that first license is a 6-month original license. At that prior to that 6-month period, you would just need to submit a renewal application, and there is some paperwork you'd need to submit for that, and consultant will come out and do a renewal inspection at that time. So it's kind of just a real quick overview of the process. Also, here's some helpful resources for individuals. I'm going to flip back to my PowerPoint. Any questions while I am switching back?
Jessica, there was one question in the chat box related to playground equipment and inspections for home-based centers or in-home centers.
For homes, we don't require inspections of playground equipment. If there are elevated surfaces that are more than 30 inches, we just need to ensure that there's enough surfacing underneath that equipment. So wood chips, sand, rubber pellets, whatever that is. But we won't require that. We'll just need to make sure that it's age appropriate for the children. In homes, you can use residential equipment, so that's different. So it is very different. We do have a separate rule set for homes than we do for centers. So just be aware of that. Some rules are similar or the same, some are very different. So just being aware of that.
Thank you. And then 2 more questions. So question number 2, related to, there were a couple of questions about how many classes were required until you become a licensed provider. I attempted to answer that in the chat box, but wanted to give you a chance to correct or expand. And my understanding is that there isn't a set number of courses or even a series of courses, but that it is training content and hours, among other things like inspections and fingerprinting and some other things that as a whole are a part of the process. Training is just one portion of it.
Sure. So to be licensed, so I'm going to answer this one way, and then if the individual who asked the question has more questions about that, feel free to unmute and ask. But for a home license, before we can open the license, there are some required health and safety trainings and CPR and first aid training, safe sleep training that will need to be completed prior to us opening the license. So there is a requirement there. The health and safety trainings are about 8 hours. CPR first aid, depending where you get it and how you get it, 6 to 8 hours. And then the safe sleep training, it's just a 1 hour training. Both the health and safety, actually all of them you can access off of my registry. For the CPR first aid, you do need to also have a in-person skills test completed because you do actually need to be certified, not just trained. So that's for homes. For centers, staff, program director, licensee would all need to, before we can open a license, make sure that they've completed the required health and safety trainings. Safe sleep as well if there's infants and toddlers, but you're probably mostly doing school age. And then for program directors, I did mention there is an education requirement, so they would need to fit on that rubric somewhere, whether they've had a couple semesters of specific coursework that has to do in a child-related field, or they have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in something, or a credential, because we will recognize those as well. So there are some specific, so it just really depends on who the individual is and what kind of license they're pursuing. But, there is some just basic standard training that has to be completed prior to us opening a license, up to some, educational qualifications as well. So I don't know if that answered the question for the individual or if they have more questions.
I'll keep an eye on the chat box to see
Okay.
there. And just to follow up on that, you mentioned the credential. There is actually a youth development credential that meets the requirements for licensing, correct?
Yes, I believe so. I've never come across it. I've never had someone that qualifies that way so I've never seen it. But yes, it is in our rules that there is a credential that does apply for that program director position.
I'll admit to it being a leading question. I just dropped a link in the chat box there. It's called the Michigan Youth Development Associate Credential and Certificate. There are two different paths there. The credential is the one that you'd be looking at that would help you to be able to meet those requirements of licensing. So check that link out. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to chat with you. We have a member of our staff, Sonia Hall, who is our guru of the credential and works directly with the systems like my registry and licensing and all that fun stuff that can help answer questions or get you connected to a group of people who may also be working through that process. Is there a difference? How do I say this? There are ratios, right? Staff-student ratios. Do they ever change in different settings, environments, locations, or is it always that? So if they go on a field trip, if they're outside.
Yeah, no, it doesn't change. So the ratio is the ratio. For school age, it's the 1 to 18. And then for younger children, it's just kind of a breakdown depending on what age they are. So it does not change. Of course, best practice is, because remember, I said we're the minimum standard. Best practices, if you're on a playground, if you're off-site, if you're on a field trip, you're probably staffing a little extra because you just need the extra eyes and the hands because you're not in your typical space that you can control. It's an environment that you cannot control. So that's best practice. But our school age 1 to 18 ratio, it's at all times. I hope that answers that question.
It does. Thank you. Has anyone heard about school age programs in school buildings being license exempt again?
No, I've not heard that will happen. So sorry. I know we took that away. They were exempt for a while and then we took it away. I don't know if it's something that will come back. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer on that one.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, I think we're
Yeah.
caught up in the chat box. So
Perfect.
continue.
All right, thank you. So back to the application process, kind of went through that resource guide with you. You know, the applicant is the individual applying. It's typically the person who will oversee, is the corporation of whatever program is being, is running, being responsible for running that program. We do have the comprehensive background check requirements, which is that fingerprinting, administrative capabilities. We do, expect that they have the administrative capacity to run a program. So we do look at that a little bit, and that they know and follow the rules. So just being familiar with what the rule set is and know how to follow those rules. Like I mentioned with that guide that I was showing you, there is a process. There are quite a few steps in that process. But once that application is submitted to our central office, and they get all the the base paperwork that they need, it does get assigned to a consultant. And then that consultant will then communicate with that applicant about what other items are needed. We do have a checklist that we maintain whenever we get a new application given to us. And we just need to make sure we're checking all those boxes, that we've reviewed all those documents, all those policies. We've gotten the different paperwork requirements that we need to have on our end, and that's all in compliance. Once everything looks good and we have everything, then we come out and do that on-site inspection to actually look at the space, measure, get that license opened up. Our process requires that once we've done that inspection and everything is in full compliance, so everything has to be perfect. Everyone has had to have completed their trainings. Everything is set up in the rooms. All the postings are there. There's enough space for the children that you plan to enroll. Everything's all perfect, 100%. Then within 5 days of that on-site inspection, or the date that everything is perfect, we have to write that report and submit it to our supervisor for approval. Our supervisors are actually the individuals who open the license in the system. For centers, the time frame for that whole process, to be realistic, I tell most individuals it can take up to a year. By the time you get all those inspections completed, get those reports back to us, and as long as they're in full compliance, that can take time. If a fire inspection comes back that you need specific fire doors, those need to be ordered, those need to be paid for, those need to be installed, the fire inspector needs to follow up. So that can take months. The lead hazard, if there's items, that can take some time and some money too. So just so individuals don't think that this is a quick turnaround, it can take up to a year. And for us to review all those policies, certainly it depends on the applicant, how quickly things are turned into the consultant. It really is gauged by that. If the consultant has to keep reminding or asking for documents or different things, it can take longer. So it really is, the onus is on the applicant. How quickly, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Yeah, if you're making sure to follow up and sending things to your consultant, that process certainly can be shortened up. I've opened centers up in 3, 4, 5 months, depending on how quickly that applicant is getting things to me. So, and we do try to prioritize those originals, because we know that you want to get opened. There is one thing, unfortunately, that's causing a little bit of a delay right now, with new programs opening up. We do have a requirement for fire that a plan review needs to be completed, and that is through the Bureau of Fire Services. And what they need, there is a whole process online for that, to complete that process, but that needs to get approved before we can kind of manage and do what we need to do after that. So that's getting worked on to make sure that goes a little bit smoother, a little bit faster, but that is something that needs to be completed as well. All right, let me move to my next slide. So working with Child Care Licensing Bureau, your consultant is an added support for you. I know Someone mentioned like, you know, the red tape, the process, that consultant, it's an added resource and added support for you. If you view consultants that way versus someone who's just going to come and, you know, lay the hammer down when they come out, view them as a support, as a help, reach out to them, communicate with them, ask them questions. Communication is key. As long as you're letting them know what's happening, they'll reciprocate that. And our job is to try and help you when we come out. We do have the regulatory side that we also need to do, but our title is consultant. So we are here to help you through that process and help you understand it is a lot. It is a lot. And so consultants, we do need to help you with that. Wanted to take you back to I'll finish the slide and then we'll go back to the website, because the website also is there as a support, as a resource for you, because all of our information is there. It is all public. We do also have technical assistance, which explains the specific rules, why they exist, and how to maintain compliance. We also offer orientations. If you are applying as a home provider, you are required, that's one more thing you got to do. Orientation, you are required to attend orientation before you move on to the next step in the process of applying. That orientation is it's just an overview of the rules and kind of the processes and licensing. We do offer center orientations as well. That goes over all the center rules. It is not required if you apply for a license, but it is an option. And we offer those right now. They're being offered virtually, so you're able to join into those trainings, and you can register for them online. But that is an option, even if you're currently licensed and have been doing this for a while and worked with your licensing consultant. It's not a bad idea to attend an orientation. It's free. It's training. It does take about 6 hours, and it's just a good refresher on what the rules are, the expectations are, and if there's been any updates or changes. So it is good to go to those orientations. Those are available. The orientation is available for program directors and for licensee designees. So those are the individuals, because it's more of the administrative end of licensing. If you want specific licensing training for your staff, reach out to your consultant. That is part of our job also, to go out and do trainings. Like I'm doing this training today, part of my job, but I also go out to my centers. I have a center that's asking for training on active supervision. So I'm going to schedule a time to go during one of their staff meetings and present what licensing looks for in terms of active supervision. But I've done just kind of overviews for about the rules, different things. Whatever you're interested in, reach out to your consultant. Again, they're a resource. They're there to be a support for you. Those are free trainings that your consultant can do for you. So make sure you're reaching out and asking. So all part of the job that we do. All right, I'm going to jump back to our website. Any questions while I'm moving to our website?
Just to revisit the home-based play equipment, just a clarification on the rubber mats. If there are specific elements of like a playground, whether it's indoor, outdoor, is it best there was I think a specific example shared in the chat. I'm just wondering, is it best to have questions like that go to the consultant in that region?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because that's so specific to their space
Sure.
that it would be better for them to reach out
Okay.
to their consultant.
Thank you. Yeah, so Meredith, go ahead and if you don't know who your consultant is, you can take a look at that that lovely little map that I think Deandra dropped into the chat box, and you can look there. There's another question around, how do I receive a provider number? At what point in the process do they receive that?
Is that for payments, DHHS payments? Is that what they're referring to?
I'm not sure. If you're I'm going through the list to say I should have written down who it was.
That's okay. I feel like that's what it is for.
Now I'm not finding it in the list. I wrote it down on a sheet of paper.
because terminology, we all use different terms.
Mhm.
So provider ID number,
Oh, here it is.
my
From
experience is,
from Brianna Ramsey. Okay, another question I have is how do I get a provider number? So
okay.
yeah.
So Brianna, if you want to unmute, is it for the payments, for DHHS payments?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that about the provider number one more time? I had to step away. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Is that for DHHS payments that you're asking?
No, so basically my aunt, like I take care of her 9-month-old daughter, and she said that I could be a childcare provider and like I could get paid, like I guess from the state or the government. But she
Mhm.
said that it's something about a provider number.
Sure. So that is through DHHS, so Department of Health and Human Services. You'd need to reach out to them and let them know that you're interested in becoming a licensed exempt provider because you're caring for related children. And they would give you that information. So it's a separate entity. It's not Child Care Licensing Bureau.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jessica, I think in response to that, do you know how many absent days DHHS will pay for?
I don't. No, it's a different department and different, they have their different requirements and rules, if you will, as well. So yeah, it's different.
Good deal. All right, thank you.
Yes. So on our website, I guess I'll point this out. We do have this Child Care Hub Information Records Portal. This is our new online system now. So this is where if you're wanting to apply for a license or you are currently licensed and need to apply for renewal, you would do it through this online portal. There is a frequently asked questions section. When you actually log into the portal or look at the portal, there are resources on how to create an account, how to navigate this system, how to do all the things. So you can renew, you can modify, report your incidents here, fill out your corrective action plans. If there's a special investigation, you can see the process in that. So this is now our online portal that you as a provider will use if you are licensed. So you can apply for your original license in this system, or like I said, if you're already licensed, use this portal to renew, to submit information to your licensing consultant. You can still do all the paper applications and paperwork. If paper is easier for you, that's fine. That is an option too, but this is now our new system. As consultants, we also work in CHIRP as well now. But we have a different access than you. So all our reports, everything we do is now also in CHIRP. So that information is here, the login information. You can access resources on how to create that account and manage your account in there. I mentioned our Strong Start. This is if you're ready or want to become licensed. These individuals, this unit here will help you with that. So you can click there and it will take you to information on how to get licensed. This is information on just different strategies that the state is doing to encourage the increase in childcare and access for families. So there's information there. Our childcare background check system, I mentioned the fingerprinting. This is that system here. This would only be used for individuals that are licensed. Once they get apply for a license, they would get access to this system and you would be given information on how to use that system to ensure that everyone that has access to children are fingerprinted, and both homes and centers use this system. I mentioned earlier, this is the area where you will be looking for if you have any questions about anything. Real quick, we'll just tour this quickly. We do have all of our rules posted. I feel like someone asked about the rules, so we do have them. So they are listed here for you. So public information, you can click right on the rules and it just pulls it all up for you so you can look at it. Someone mentioned not agreeing with rules. This is where you can submit your rule suggestions. So if there's a rule that you wish would change, or maybe you want to add a rule, you have some suggestions for that. That's an option there too. All the other statutes that I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the different laws and acts that you needed to be aware of, these are actual live links that will take you to those laws and those acts, so you can review those as well. So that information is there public for you to see. And there is information along with that resource guide, but here as well, it lays everything out, how to apply. It has the live links if you're going to apply for an original, a renewal. There's center and home applications, that whole process. So these are all live links for you to know what to do if you need to apply or renew. And then we do have information. Individuals were asking about orientation or the trainings. This is where the information is about the center orientation. This will show you the schedule, and it'll give you information on how to register for those, and then same for homes. And there are some more resources here for training. My registry is listed there. CPR and first aid. Oh, this is something I would like to show. If you're currently licensed, CPR and first aid training, make sure that the CPR first aid training organization association that you are using is approved. That is something that I find when I go out and do inspections, is that some programs are using unapproved organizations for their training, and we can't accept those. So right on our website, it does list who we have approved for CPR and first aid. So making sure that the organization you're reaching out to for that training is approved. So I know someone asked even about that, like, do they need to have credentials or be approved? So for CPR first aid, yes. Excuse me. This is my favorite thing to show everybody. So we have what we call our technical assistance and consultation. We have a set for the home rules, and we have a set for center rules. When you have a question about rules or you're not sure, this is a wonderful resource for you, because it will show you the rule number, the wording of the rule, why that rule exists. So this rationale. It will also give you technical assistance, which this is how to comply with that rule. So it'll list things. If there's a legal requirement, it will also list that. Excuse me, I keep coughing. The other thing it will give you, I'm going to search here real quick. I love this search feature. It will also give you, maybe not, consultation. So this is best practice. These are just things that we would recommend that you do, best practice. The technical assistance is actually the have tos. These are the you can or consider that. I apologize. So this lists every single rule. If you have questions about something specific, this is a good place to go to. This is where consultants go as well. Sometimes if you have questions, we will go to the technical assistance and look that up. Any questions about anything so far?
One question, is there an interim checklist or bullet points of the things they will be checking at an in-home check, not a renewal, but the one in between?
There is not a specific checklist for the public right now. That is something that has been discussed. In policy, we have a checklist, but that is not public at this time. You can certainly reach out to your consultant and ask them if they would just give you a list. I personally do have a list that I send out to providers. It doesn't specify the rules, but it just says I'll be looking at X, Y, and Z. These are the things. Those interim inspections, we just look at some rules, not all the rules. Clearly, we are aware of all the rules when we go out. So if we do see something that's a concern, that's not necessarily something we have to review during that interim inspection, we can still look at that when we're out.
And how do I access the resource page for new childcare providers?
The one that I just showed earlier,
I believe so.
it's on our website under the provider resources. Let me go back. So, right, this is our homepage. So childcare licensing resources, resource guide is right here.
So I'm sorry, no, not that one, the one where, trying to take a picture of it. For new child care centers, that need help starting, that page.
Oh. Okay, yep. So this is our homepage, so our main page here. Our strong start.
Our
You can-
strong start, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. Let me make sure. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Was there some? Oh, another real quick to show you on our webpage is all of our forms are on here as well. So as a center, all the forms are here so that you can just print those out. I know paperwork is something someone mentioned. I'm one of those weird people that likes paperwork. That's why I started doing this job. And then they took all my paper away because now everything's digital. So I have digital paperwork now that I work with. I've created my own paperwork. But yes, there is paperwork that is required. There are forms that you have to have on file when we come out to do our inspections. There is paperwork you need to ask of parents. What I tell providers whenever they're expressing their frustration with the paperwork, it really is to protect you. All of that documentation, all of that information that you have that you're required to have, it's to protect you in the long run. It's for liability. If someone ever comes and says that I never said they could do that, or I didn't give them that information, you have it documented that you did. So it really is to protect you. It is a lot to keep track of. It is a lot to ensure is in compliance. But once you get a system in place and you're organized, detail oriented, and it's just part of the work that you have to do when you're administrator of a program. All these things are really meant to protect you in the long run. A lot of these forms we've created for you. There's very few forms that you have to create on your own. I know Deandra showed the one form where it has all the information about the children. We do have that form also. You can certainly create your own. The only thing we would ask is that you need to ensure that everything that is on our card is on your version, and it just needs to get approved by your consultant. So if you're creating your own information record, your own contract that includes this, just make sure it includes all of this. Let your consultant know. They will need to take a look at it and make sure that it contains everything. But again, this is liability. If you're like Deandra said, if a child, something happens, you don't have a phone number, or they put the wrong one down. I know someone wrote, they won't give us the right number, they don't update it. If you've asked them to update it and you've got the date on the card and their initials that they updated it, but they didn't give you the correct information, that's on them, not you. So you can say, this is the number I tried to call. I have had investigations where I have looked at phones and seen what was the number that you dialed, and the call didn't go through, and that's what was written on the card. So it really is meant to protect you. And some consultants are more nitpicky on the paperwork than others. I'm one of those individuals that is picky. I saw some names that I recognize that are on my caseload. I'm picky on that paperwork. So making sure it's all there, but it's really meant to protect you. and we are interested in the health and safety of these children in care, we want to make sure that you are equipped to provide the best for these children. Part of that is just having that information available to you.
Are there
And-
grants for childcare centers located in schools that are in need of equipment and supplies?
I don't know that we have anything that specific. I know Great Start to Quality had a few grants recently for equipment, for materials. I don't think it mattered what age group you were using. You did have to be licensed. That's another perk to being licensed is some of these grants are only available for licensed providers, the ones that we offer some grants and Great Start to Quality offers some grants. I don't think right now there's anything active, but there may be something in the near future. So reaching out to those resource centers, Great Start to Quality, and finding out from them. I don't know of anything specific right now.
Yeah.
Hey, Yolanda, can we clarify? Are you looking for equipment or looking to donate equipment?
Looking for equipment.
Okay, I just wanted to check and see.
Okay.
Amanda, I see your hand raised. Go ahead and come off.
Yeah, I had a question about the childcare information paperwork you were just showing. So is that something that's required, like that specific paperwork for licensed centers, or is it just like the information that's on there? So if centers or like in-home centers have their own forms or their own like software platforms that they use, if the information is the same, would they still have the ability to like use those paperwork, like that paperwork or form or platform, or does it have to be the specific one provided?
We do allow, our rules do allow that you either use that form or an approved form approved by the Bureau. So if you're using a different platform, if you're using a different document, you need to run it by your consultant and say, this is what we would like to use instead of the child information record. They just need to review it, make sure that it has everything, that the minimum of what we have on our card. You can certainly add much more, but that it has at least what is on our card. And once it's approved, then you can use that.
Got it. And is there a list of already approved resources somewhere, or we would just have to check with a consultant on that?
It's per, because it just depends. Like I have a couple of programs that they have an online enrollment process, and it's been approved by me because their online application, if you will, or enrollment paperwork includes everything that's on our card. So then I just know everything's on there. And when I come out to do an inspection and need to look at those child information cards, they just run a spreadsheet that shows all the fields and that those children have those fields filled in.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Any
one
other
last-
questions?
Yeah,
I know
one last one in the chat
Yeah.
box here. After you've submitted all of your documentation, how long does it take to complete your inspections?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time for me.
Yeah, once you have all your documentation in, how long till you can have all your inspections completed?
And I assume this is for an original application?
It
So
doesn't
you're-
specify, but I
It
assume
doesn't
so, yeah.
specify? Okay, so,
Yes.
okay, so for an original, would highly recommend that you're doing a little bit of a combination of both. You know, certainly that fire inspection should be done first. And then you can be submitting paperwork to either to our central office unit that's processing that application, or if you've already been assigned a consultant, sending them what they need. You know, you can submit whatever you have ready and send it in. There's no set necessarily order or timeline. It's just like when things are done, get them sent in so that we can move on to the next bullet. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. I sent in all the original, application documentation and everything, and I started scheduling for the fire inspection and everything else. But I only have a navigator. No one never reached back out to me as far
Okay.
as my licensed consultant.
Okay, then please reach back out to that navigator that you were working with to find out what else they need from you. If you do not get a response on that directory that I showed on our website that shows all the field staff, there is a supervisor for that central office unit. So you can reach out. Her name's Monica. You can reach out to her and just say, I've been working, or no, there is one for the navigators. Sorry. She's new staff. I can't remember her name right now. But there is a manager for those navigators. So if you don't hear anything, reach out to that supervisor and ask.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, sometimes the influx of information that they have coming in, it sometimes does get difficult to follow up. So just keep asking and calling. There are phone numbers listed on that field staff directory as well. Any other questions? I know our time is running out. There's just so much information about licensing. I can go real quick if there's no other questions. Just real quick, inspections. We do the original inspection it's that very first inspection that you will have with your consultant to look at the space, measure the space, see how it's set up. That is a scheduled inspection. And because we want to make sure there's enough time for that inspection can take a little bit longer depending on your site and what's going on. And then we also do renewals and interims. So a regular license is 2 years. So you would renew your license every 2 years. The original is 6 months, which I mentioned earlier. But once you get on a regular license, it's every 2 years. So you would get a renewal inspection. Those are unannounced. Those, as consultants, policy requires that we look at certain aspects of your program. So if you're offering transportation, if you're offering before school, after school, infant, toddler, whatever it is, we need to see all those things. So we probably will be there the bulk of the day or the bulk of your program. If you run a half-day program or a program that just lasts 2 or 3 hours, we are there the whole time. And we're looking at those renewal inspections. We're looking at the whole rule set. So every single rule in the licensing rule book, I'll get asked, what are you going to check? Every single rule. We have to verify compliance for everything. Clearly, I mean, we're looking at specific things, but we want to make sure that you're in compliance with all those rules. And the year in between the renewal inspections is an interim inspection. And so that's that year in between. The renewal is 2 years. So the year in between, you get an interim inspection. There we are just looking at specific rules. We're not looking at everything. It is also an unannounced inspection. It will feel like a renewal because we're still going to ask to see child records. We're still going to ask to see staff records. We're still going to sit in rooms. We're still going to watch programming, all of those things. We may not be there as long. And in terms of paperwork, we're only looking at certain things on the paperwork. We're not looking at everything. So it is a little bit of a shorter one. It's just kind of a touch in and just kind of check in, see how things are going. Other inspections that you'll have are modifications or follow-ups. Those, the modifications can be scheduled because you're wanting to add something. You want a new room approved. You're adding something. A playground has been added. The consultant needs to come out and look at the playground before children can start using it. You also need a playground inspection. So some of those modifications might require outside entities to do some inspections as well. That's scheduled because we want to make sure we have time to speak with the program director or the licensee designee. We're able to access the space, measure it if need be, or look at it. So that one is scheduled. You notify the consultant that you want a change. You can do that through Chirp. You can do that through an email or a phone call. They'll let you know what kind of paperwork or what kind of inspections they'll need. Policies might need to be updated if you're adding a separate program now that you didn't have before. So it just depends on what it is. The other type is follow-up. If there was a citation on safe sleep or a fire safety rule or the health and safety trainings, CPR first aid, we do have to follow up on some of those citations. So it could be an email follow-up, or you're sending verification of training, or you're sending photos of whatever wasn't in compliance when we came out. There is usually a time frame for that. So that's just kind of a follow-up. So depending, that might be scheduled or not scheduled. Some licenses do get put on increased monitoring. which means we can stop in and follow up on specific things. Usually we do that if there's issues with supervision or ratio requirements. We'll just kind of pop in and make sure that the facility is in compliance with ratio supervision. Those are unannounced. Usually they're for a time frame, 3 months, 6 months, and again, unannounced for those visits. We do also do special investigation inspections. If a complaint does come into our department, we are required to go out to the facilities and ask questions and see if the allegations that have been reported are true or not. For those special investigations, those are unannounced as well. And, we are going to ask to see records, talk to staff. We might need to call parents depending on what the allegations are. Special investigations are not fun for anybody, consultants or providers. They can feel personal. They can feel, depending on what the allegation is, they're very stressful for everyone involved. But we just ask that you cooperate, that you just be truthful and honest. If a mistake was made, a mistake was made. Hopefully we can correct it, move on. I tell providers when I go out on special investigations that use it as a learning opportunity. I know it's not fun, it's stressful, but use it as a reminder, refresher of these are the rules that we need to be following, and we need to make sure to put plans in place to follow those rules. So as a consultant, I cannot just drive by one of my centers, one of the homes that I have licensed, and stop in and see how things are going. I have to have a reason to be out there. So it would be for one of these reasons. You're due for an inspection. There's a follow-up I need to do with you concerning whatever it was, or there's a special investigation that's been opened up. So we can't just stop in, or you've asked us to come out for something. Those are the only times that we can come out. Anytime we do an on-site inspection or follow-up, you will get a report with findings and timeframes and all of that. And then we do expect that you keep those reports either on file. All our reports do go public, so they are on our public website, so anyone can view those reports. We're not gonna have time, but I just kind of listed all the rules if someone had specific questions about rules. I guess I'll just open it up if there's any questions, but I know we don't have much time left.
We only have a couple minutes here, and I want to make sure I get a chance to share a couple of the resources in the chat box, and also the session evaluation, so folks can get their credit in my registry. So let me go ahead and share that. And there's a lovely little QR code there that will take you to the session evaluation. Go ahead and fill that out, submit it, and that's what we'll use to upload your participation today into my registry. A couple of the other links that I just dropped into the chat box are, one, our website. So there's a training or professional development calendar there, as well as links to our partners. The newsletter, you can click on there and sign up. And then my registry, if you're not engaged or involved in the my registry website, I would highly encourage you. It's free. It takes a couple seconds to be able to create a profile, and then you have it. And there is also some information on there in terms of receiving some help or support in how you might use that in your programs. The last thing I'll share is that even if you are not pursuing licensing, if it's not a fit for you right now, or you're not interested, or there are other barriers, whatever it may be, I will share that what is included in those licensing rules is a great foundation and start for providing a safe space for young people to be in, and builds a foundation for quality. It's really difficult to have quality things in place in quality experiences for young people without the safety components being taken care of first. If you think of it as like a hierarchy, or like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you got to take care of the safety needs at the bottom before you can get to the stuff at the top. So regardless of whether or not your organization is in a position or required to pursue a childcare license, the stuff that's in there is still applicable to you in your programs, and making sure that young people are safe, and that your staff have the qualifications and training they need to be able to do their jobs too. So would encourage you to still take a look at it, and consider how your organization might be accommodating some of those things that are listed in the licensing requirements. So with that said, I just want to say thank you again to Jessica and Deandra for being here today, for giving up their time, for helping us do great things for young people, and wish you all a wonderful day. I will end the recording here in a moment, and we'll invite you to stay on. If you have additional questions, I can try to answer. But recognizing also that many of you have other places to run off to. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time, and we'll talk again soon.
I do have a question if nobody